Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comrades, compañeros, welcome. I'm adjusting my hair because it looks terrible. Welcome to another episode of the Moynihan Report here on the Two-Way Network. I think he yelled at me for not saying the Two-Way Network. I said, it's in the bug in the corner. You can see the damn thing. But you should check out, Mark Halprin, Ethan Strauss. We got two Ethans now. We got Ethan Suplee. This is like a murderer's row of shows. So watch this one, of course. You're already here. Watch the other ones, too. So here on the Two-Way Network, the Moynihan Report. All right, tonight we have a great show because we have my old pal Steve Krakauer coming on in a second. He's a media critic. He writes a column for The Hill. He's been worked at CNN. He's got a great book that we're going to talk about, too. But it is kind of my favorite subject. Talking about how bad we in the media suck, and I include myself in that. I mean, I'm not sucking right now. I've been pretty good recently. But there's a lot to talk about, particularly in Trump world these days, because, look, we all watch. I don't know if we all watch. I certainly did. I stayed up till 1 a.m., which was about 9 a.m., I guess, in Tel Aviv, when the hostages were released. We were all desperate for that to happen. I said on this show, and I've said a number of times, in the past 2 years, that every time there's a deal on the table or something resembling a deal, that I worry that it's not going to happen. These are people that don't typically keep their promises. But it did happen, and that was an amazing win for Donald Trump. And I agree with those people who say that it probably was, it might be the only day that you can say this about. It was the best day of Donald Trump's presidency thus far. And I would include the first term in that too. It's an enormous achievement. And the last time we were on the show, we talked about the number of people who would typically be Trump critics not being very critical on this and saying, look, if this sticks, this is a mighty and amazing achievement. He was in the Knesset, speaking to the Knesset. We could play clips of that, but it's just a comedy routine, despite the fact that you have these people that have been underground in Gaza for 2 years, emaciated. Donald Trump is doing shtick in the Knesset, but everyone loved it. They had their sort of versions of MAGA hats on. So, look, we're very critical of Donald Trump on the show. I have a bunch of criticism today for what this administration is doing stupid stuff today. But let's give credit where credit is due. And there are certain people, I'm going to call out one, actually somebody I know, that are very disappointing. Bill Kristol, who kind of made a career being called horrible neocon, Likudnik, and that Israel firster and all the slurs that were hurled at Bill. And I like Bill personally. He's a very smart guy. But there is such thing as Trump derangement syndrome. It is an acronym that is way overused. You criticize Trump in the way that I do, and you get called somebody who is ravaged with TDS. But Bill Kristol, apparently he podcasted about this and mentioned it on a podcast, but the guy was just tweeting like crazy and didn't mention the hostage release. Guys, it's important that the person that you loathe might land on the right square once in a while to give the person credit for it and say that this is ultimately a positive thing. Negative things, because we're talking about media. If you guys have been paying attention, you've seen these Pentagon, this absolute lunacy from the Pentagon that has sort of new guidelines and decided to make every media organization sign this stuff. They could potentially criminal prosecution if you publish stuff that you're not supposed to publish and ask questions about things you're not supposed to know as a Pentagon correspondent. One of the most fascinating things about this, and this gives me a lot of hope. So I want to start on a negative thing that is slightly hopeful too. Every media organization was asked to sign this pledge, right? This comes from Pete Hegseth. And Pete Hegseth was with Donald Trump defending, sort of weakly and kind of incoherently defending this today. But basically it is this. If you don't do this, you don't sign this pledge, I don't like pledges. Just don't sign pledges as a journalist, then you won't be able to cover the Pentagon. And it's today, Tuesday? So tomorrow, Wednesday by 5 p.m., you'll have to have cleared out your desk at the Pentagon and get the hell out of there because you will not agree to not publish things that the Pentagon doesn't want you to publish. This, people, is the history of journalism. Can you imagine this, something like this happening under the Bush administration, if it was Abu Ghraib, if it was stuff about weapons of mass destruction, if it was stuff during the Nixon administration, the first Nixon administration, of the Pentagon Papers? This is what we do as journalists. You have to find out things that the government doesn't want us to know, and those people in the government are being paid by us, and we want to know their secrets. This is what journalism is. But here's the hopeful thing about this. Not very hopeful, obviously. The hopeful thing about this, there's only one news network, and I am very reluctant to call this ridiculous television channel a news network, that agreed to this. OAN, One America News. Is it news or network? What is the N? One America News or whatever, which would be One America, who all thinks the same thing, agreed to this cockamamie pledge. But the people who didn't included Fox News, print publications like conservative ones like the Washington Examiner. Washington Times is a conservative print publication, said no to. And the one that really surprised me, Newsmax, which is about as MAGA as you can get of a news outlet, they said no to. So there's been some pushback. I've been saying for a very long time that, well, there's some things that I don't love vis-a-vis the media and Donald Trump. The media has been pretty decent about pushing back on not all of this stuff, but on a lot of this stuff. I mean, you see Ted Cruz standing up for Jimmy Kimmel and saying, no, the FCC and Brandon Carr should not be turning the screws on a friggin' comedy host who the president doesn't like. So after the president's great triumph, and again, I don't want to immediately go back to being horrible about him, but this is not a good thing. And for people in journalism, have been paying attention to this is one of many. We denounced Barack Obama when he was hunting leakers, including my old friend James Rosen, who was being hunted for talking to people, I believe in the Defense Department, maybe the State Department. It's off the top of my head. So let's be consistent about this stuff. Let's be consistent when the president and Pete Hegseth, by the way, who's making this announcement, is a former Fox News contributor. A man who is on television and his own network says, nope, sorry, Pete Hegseth, we're not going to do that. But let's get back to just media in general, right? Because we have Steve Krakauer here. Is Steve here, actually? Is he with us? Because I was going to do this without him, because I love doing things without Steve. You know, I just like to leave him. I want to, this is the thing what is the name of Steve's book? Does anyone remember? I know Uncovered, but good, Steve Krakauer. Too long of a subtitle. How the Media Got Cozy with Power, Abandoned Its Principles, and Lost the People. Everything he says there is true. But I just couldn't remember it, and I try not to use the prompter. Let's get Steve in here, because Steve's one of my favorite people. Absolutely brilliant.
Hey, Michael.
Brilliant media critic. Thanks for being here, Steve Krakauer.
Hey, great to be on. Thanks for having me.
I want to start by having a sip of water, and then I want to start by playing you couple of clips.
Okay. First one's telling me my subtitle was too long.
Oh, it's way too. Who didn't tell you this? Was there someone like Steve? It's like 3 lines. I can't remember it. Is that a me problem or a you problem?
Well, the title is one word. You know, uncover. So he was like, all right, if we're doing one word, we got to do a long subtitle. I think, right? I don't know.
I think that Batya Ungar Sargon, my friend and frequent sparring partner, Bad News. Her book, great title.
Second Class, another great book.
Second Class. She has great titles. The book I'm not so convinced of.
Okay.
She's been on she's been on the Fifth Column. We yell at each other about it, and she's a friend. But I want to put. We talked a little bit on the show about Barry Weiss. I try to avoid that subject because she's a friend of mine. I've worked for her, and people think I either have an axe to grind or a friendship to maintain. I just try to be honest about this stuff because I didn't know that John Oliver still had a television show on HBO. It was a one-time a comedy show. He was quite funny when I saw him as a correspondent on Jon Stewart's show, where he kind of got his start. But he did an episode the other day in which the topic of the episode was Barry Weiss, because there's nothing more important in America than Barry Weiss. But I wanted to play a couple of clips and get your reaction to it, because it's kind of right in your wheelhouse. This first one's a long one, but it's necessarily long. And this is from, I think, two nights ago, John Oliver on Barry Weiss and her taking over as editor-in-chief of CBS News.
And look, this isn't the first time an outsider billionaire has tried thumbing the scale of a news organisation. We've seen Jeff Bezos increasingly meddle with the Washington Post and Patrick Soon-Shiong do the same at the LA Times. But this feels like the most sweeping change yet, and one of the few remaining prestige names in news. And if one person has suddenly been handed this much power over a whole news organisation, it is worth knowing who that one person is. So tonight, let's take a look at Barry Weiss. And let's start with the fact that she's been given editorial control of a massive news organisation, even though she's never run a TV network, has no experience directing television coverage, and as one 60 Minutes producer pointed out, is not even a reporter. That is true. She didn't come up through the news side of a newspaper, but through the opinion pages, which are a very different thing. She really made a name for herself after she was hired by the op-ed page for the New York Times in 2017. And to hear her tell it, it was for a pretty simple reason.
To put it bluntly, I was brought in, along with Bret Stephens from the Wall Street Journal, as a kind of intellectual diversity hire. My job explicitly was to bring in voices that wouldn't otherwise naturally appear in the New York Times, either because other editors wouldn't think to commission them, or the writers themselves would think, the New York Times would never accept me.
Yeah, she was apparently tasked with finding voices that the Times op-ed page would never accept, which is already a big claim.
It's a big claim. Wow. The New York Times thought it was a thing. By the way, we bit off a lot there because there's so much. But
I had so many thoughts.
I knew you would have lots of thoughts. I will get to mine, and I will cede the floor to you, Steve Krakauer. What are your thoughts? I didn't hear any jokes, by the way, but apparently the intellectual diversity hire is supposed to be a laugh line or something. But that's what op-ed pages do. They hire people from different places. But go ahead, Steve.
Right. Yeah, I know that you throw out intellectual diversity and intellectual diversity hire like that's some sort of smear on Barry. I have to say, in general, and I've got lots of, I would say, nuanced thoughts on Barry. I don't think anyone makes Barry Weiss sound better than the people who hate her. I just want the Barry Weiss that John Oliver hates. I want her to be like the person who runs CBS News. I don't think she is. But man, he really it's sort of like there is a Barry Weiss derangement syndrome, I think, that exists among people who are like a tick to the left of Barry. Like we're not talking about, on the other side of the aisle or some, they're just a hair away from where she is aligned on things, and it's like the hatred is just enormous. I think that there is a lot of jealousy in the media. That's the first thing I would say. I think that there are
that's the number one instinct of people in the media. I didn't get $150 million.
Right. Why is this person being tasked with that? And again, whether you want to say, I've seen some reporting on Barry getting they're running the numbers and they're crunching things. It's like, do you not understand how the media works? Barry's got the juice among a certain subset of people, and those subset of people are running CBS News or they're in some other hallways of power, and that's how this works. So, I think many things that Barry Weiss with CBS News will not live up to what her haters think will happen, and will not live up to what the people who love Barry hope will happen. I think the truth will be probably somewhere in between, and it's probably because Barry succeeded in independent media because she can. And the challenges that she will face are the institutional roadblocks that will always be at CBS News. I mean, you could even call it the Free Press News, or you can call it the Free Press TV, and it will just be CBS News, and it will just be crusty old legacy dinosaur CBS, unfixable. So I wish her a lot of luck, but I do think that the haters like John Oliver are just wildly, just completely unclear about the way the media works.
Can I get you guys? I just thought of something. Can I get you guys to grab something for me? Let's just do it in real time, like Jamie on the Rogan show. Hey, Jamie, there's a headline in the New York Times. Just Google this for me. Vice Refinery 29, New York Times, and then we'll put that headline up. And in the meantime, I want to say a couple things about this. Is you notice the beginning of this when he says, these horrible people that come in take over media organizations like Patrick Soon, the guy of the LA Times, and
Soon-Shang,
and Jeff Bezos. Those are the people that. What are the two common points? The complaints are that they're not in the ideological firmament of what we would say is acceptable politics to be a billionaire who owns a newspaper. Carlos Slim never comes up, right? Anybody who owns, like, if George Soros bought a newspaper, I would say, great. I'd be interested to read it, It's only people like that, Jeff Bezos, who has said he wants the editorial page at the Washington Post to be about free minds and free markets, which he stole from Reason Magazine, by the way. And the guy from the LA Times who's had a bunch of, kind of challenging things about, medical stuff. And, he's an interesting thinker in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Maha adjacent, I would say. But
Correct,
listen,
yeah,
they all loved Jeff Bezos taking over the Washington Post and infusing it with money when he empowered the editors there to pop on Democracy Dies in Darkness on the masthead. And during the entirety of the first Trump administration, Jeff Bezos was at war with the Trump administration, not because he really cared, and I don't think he spent a lot of time thinking about it, but he let the paper do what they wanted to do. And then the business model changed. And I think also the vibe shift gets overused, but I think that there was a legitimate vibe shift in 2024. And Jeff Bezos saw the writing on the wall, and he said, I'm now empowered to stand up to my newsroom and to maybe do the paper that is a little closer to what I want. Jeff Bezos is not MAGA, okay? Patrick Soon-Shang is not MAGA. Barry Weiss is pretty much never Trump. So I think.
So why she left the Wall Street Journal, by the way? She very loudly left the Wall Street Journal and said they were getting a little too Trumpy, and then went over to the New York Times. But so I would say that she's absolutely not MAGA. But there are people bean counting on this now. The second Barry is over, there's like, well, how pro MAGA has the free press down? And they're doing these numbers. I mean, there's a lot of these unsigned editorials there attacking the administration on the Jimmy Kimmel stuff, attacking the administration on all sorts of stuff. But if it's not 100%, it's going to be that she's some sort of demonic figure that's going to destroy, by the way, the third place legacy news. Like, it's literally in third place. I mean, nobody knows anything about that network's news organization beyond 60 Minutes.
That's the other thing. I forgot the word he used. There was a word that John Oliver used to describe CBS News. Prestige, I think maybe was what he described it as.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just.
What's up,
honestly,
old man? I mean, what an old man thing to say.
I don't think many CBS News viewers would think it's prestige anymore. I mean, maybe there are a few, but listen, you've got Gayle King and the mess in the morning show. You've got the CBS Evening News. CBS Evening News still exists. It's on at 6:30 p.m. Who hosts the CBS Evening News? Who's the anchor of CBS Evening News? Who's the anchor of NBC News?
Bill Daniels? I have no idea. I know David Muir.
David Muir's at ABC. That's right. Yes, he's the only
name
Lester
that existed.
Holt. No, Lester's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Lester's
Who
gone.
did they replace him with?
I literally don't know. I mean, that is...
Yeah, nobody does, Steve.
No. No one has any idea except the people that left on Wheel of Fortune, and it just kind of drifted into the NBC nightly news. So that is completely gone. And yes, 60 Minutes, I actually do think is a brand that has some resonance. I think it's taken a lot of credibility hits, not just from the right, but from independent, fair-minded people like myself, who I don't think consider, I'm not like some hardcore conservative. I think that they completely have gone down this almost like an anti-speech activism that I've seen in the media. They're like cheering the efforts in Europe to censor individuals for putting out quote unquote dangerous speech. So 60 Minutes has taken some hits, but I think it actually does have some level of shine still to it. Not much there. Okay. It would not shock me. I made a prediction in January on News Nation, where I'm a contributor, that CBS News wouldn't exist by the end of the year. That was my big prediction. In some ways, I think that came true. Yeah. But I think the bigger thing is there is no more business model for a gigantic news organization to continually just bleed money and viewers. It just that is impossible. So yeah, Barry's going to try. She's going to give a good effort. I wish her luck. But the future is on digital. It's on distributed content. It's not on some giant umbrella company that's taking up a lot of important and expensive real estate in New York City.
Yeah. I mean, look, people don't understand media. They don't understand media markets. They don't understand the fact that if Barry took that over and made it some kind of right-wing network, like explicitly so, pro-Trump, et cetera, that wouldn't last very long. I mean, that would not be something that would be good for the bottom line of Skydance and Paramount. I mean, she understands the business. She understands the people that are inside the building, and that she has to please those people too. And there are people that come from all over the political spectrum. But the idea of this, Stephen, is what you were sort of talking about when people were running the numbers, not really understanding, well, they only have so many subscribers. It's like, that's not how this works, you dummies. And there's so many people in journalism saying this. And I asked if they could grab this for me. There's only specific things in crazy deals that people get very exercised about. I'm going to put up one. This is from the New York Times.
Okay.
Vice Media acquires Refinery 29 in a $400 million deal. Does anyone remember anything about that? Well, I do, because Refinery 29 was also part of Vice Media at that point, and was one of the most embarrassing acquisitions, but not for the $400 million deal. But that kind of thing, $150 million for a place that is doing lots of journalism, doing really good journalism, and by doing stuff I disagree with, I agree with, I don't give a shit. That's not what life is about. Media is not supposed to be comfort food. It's supposed to challenge you, and there's a lot of stuff like that comes with the free press and stuff that I disagree with. But the $150 million, which the Refinery 29 thing was a stock deal, mostly a stock deal. So all those people got nothing, just like me. Thank you for the $400 million in paper that is worth jack shit. But that is there's a stock deal involved with CBS stuff, but people are trying to find any way to shit on this and to say things like, well, she's never been a reporter. Well, that's actually not true. She started as a reporter, but she's a very good editor. She's been my editor a number of times, and she was a pain in the ass editor, but in a way that made my stuff better. But she also built a newsroom. I'm sorry, I've worked within the newsroom there. She built a newsroom. It might not be the size of CBS, but she built a newsroom. To say that she has no experience and she, is somebody who only is an opinion monger. Do you think the people that run NBC, MSNBC, ABC, CNN, where you used to work, Steve, don't have opinions? It's only Barry that has opinions? She's open about it.
She's open about it, and she's actually someone who is welcoming of a variety of opinions. And I know that there will be criticism, particularly of the Israel issue. I think that people will say, well, that
motivates a lot of us. Yeah.
Yes, I think that there's an element of that. But it's so funny. Like, let's say Barry Weiss ran a, dermatology clinic and was being acquired by some giant hospital chain. You say, well, she's never, done a surgery or something. That even has slightly more weight than this idea that you have to have some sort of credential to be a reporter. I have to tell you, the fact that Barry Weiss is not some, and by the way, she actually does have a lot of credentials in Wall Street Journal and New York Times. And so, but I can assure you, you need zero experience to be better than a lot of reporters that are out there at CBS News, at NBC, at ABC. Those people have failed in many instances, and it's not their fault. It's more the fault of the model that they've been put on, the bosses that are running the show. It's just, this is not a job that requires that sort of tact. You don't need to do that. And it's what's why I think a lot of people who are successful outside of the legacy media, corporate media structure are doing it. You mentioned CNN. I was at CNN from 2010 to 2013. And I have to say, I loved my time at CNN. I had a great time there. Most of my experiences there were great. I think it leaned left casually, but there was an effort in the 2012 election to never put your finger on the scale. We really tried hard. I knew the top executives. I worked very closely with them. That I think completely shifted during the Jeff Zucker era. But what's most interesting about my time there is I can point to a dozen people I could say off the top of my head who were making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year and did nothing. When I say they did nothing, they were involved in meetings, and their goal was obvious to get to the next meeting. Let's not make any decisions. Let's just extend it to the next one, because I don't actually have a job. All I do is move from one to the next and hope no one finds out. And so in that sense, I actually do think what Barry Weiss can do there, and she kind of alluded to this with this idea of like, what do you do here? The Elon Musk Doge effect. There is something real that you can do, because she had to do it. You have to be scrappy to build the company that she built with the free press. It's a smaller company, and they've been successful. If you install some of that ethos there, I actually do think that starts to change the equation, where if you can do CBS News, you do the exact same thing they're doing and just do it for 50% of the cost, all of a sudden your bosses are very, very happy.
Yeah. My favorite criticism, I'm building this thing, and I saw a lot of this close up, is the criticism that, she cozies up to billionaires. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what everybody in media does. Is this a new thing? We cozy up to billionaires? I mean, who is in charge of CNN? Who's the next guy in charge of CNN? You think these people are, working at Gap Kids and they get pulled out of line and say, like, you look like you might be good? He's like, no, these people all know powerful people. Don't pretend that you, as a journalist, don't understand how this game is played. She's done it very well. And also, that was not what happened with the funding of Free Press. I mean, I don't know much about it, but I know it wasn't a bunch of billionaires. It was like there were like smaller people that were interested, and it paid off. But I want to play one more clip from Oliver that really annoyed me, and then we can move on.
Okay.
But by the way, it's not about Barry Weiss. It's not about, Barry's my person and I know the story because I work there. It's emblematic of the idiot culture that comes from within media, that you are the last place team you're the 62 Mets.
Right.
And you're like, wait, you want to fire the entire bullpen? What? Who are you? It's like, well, you're not acting like a ball team. So you're to say that I don't have the credentials? You guys aren't producing anything good. And as you pointed out, it's these ossified media people that, they have credentials. What have those credentials produced? As you said, I'm very similar. I like 60 Minutes. I think it does a good job. It does a bad job sometimes too. But it is a worthwhile product, and I hope she just makes it better. And she's not going to make it Newsmax. I mean, stop being idiots. All right, here's one more clip from John Oliver.
Weiss started getting attention at the Times for writing provocative pieces like this one, in which he argued that the left had gone too far in policing cultural appropriation. This one, a largely sympathetic profile of the intellectual dark web, a term that she popularised for people like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. And this one, suggesting progressives were so focused on labelling fellow Americans fascists, they missed opportunities to call out real fascism, which is just some weapons-grade whataboutism.
That's not what whataboutism is, John Oliver. That is not weapons-grade whataboutism to say that if you take a term and you water it down, then what do you call actual fascists? Super fascists? Like ultra-Nazis? Like, no, there is an argument, and I've made this argument myself. Whataboutism is changing the subject. I mean, this became popularized during the Cold War, by the way, that when the Soviets, you would say, you're putting Solzhenitsyn in jail, they'd say, well, you guys aren't very nice to black people in your country. And it's like, yeah, let's focus on what we're talking about here, which is Solzhenitsyn. That is not weapons-grade whataboutism. So the people making these criticisms and making a 30-minute HBO 40 writers or how many? 50? They have an insane staff.
Yeah, giant staff. Yeah.
This is what it's down to, is to say, maybe we shouldn't call everyone a fascist, is the criticism of Barry Weiss in its whataboutism?
Yeah. All right. So you nailed the second headline there. How about the first one? Okay, this is the largely sympathetic profile of the intellectual dark web, and who are the terrible people who have been given a largely sympathetic platform in the New York Times? Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. I mean, but it's so emblematic of the type of people that scare people like John Oliver and scare the top executives in CBS News who have been there for 20 years. And honestly, it's Barry Weiss as well. Again, no shots at Barry. I love Barry. I think she's done a great job. But she's sort of like this idea of certain people who run in certain circles. It's not just billionaires, but I think just people who have accrued a level of power as like the cool renegade. And when really she's like, she's just like one level away from them. You want to talk to people who are really pushing the envelope there. They are not sitting there giving sympathetic profiles to Ben Shapiro. But that's what you're dealing with here. I think that's actually what makes John Oliver so scary or so scared, is because Barry is not Tucker Carlson.
Yeah,
she's not Candace Owens,
no.
and that's the kind of person that he feels like she can replace him, and I think that actually makes it a little bit more scary than some of these other people.
No, I mean, this atomization is what people like Oliver encourage. Everybody go to their corner, right? I always tell a story that when I was at Newsweek, there was a cover story. There was a pro-Obama, anti-Obama cover stories, and the anti-Obama one in 2012 was from Neil Ferguson, and Neil admittedly got a few facts wrong. I mean, there were nothing huge. The overall argument was the argument, and it wasn't that relied upon these things that he got wrong. But he very quickly corrected them, and the outrage was insane. And I realized at that point that had Neil Ferguson written this piece for National Review, no one would have cared. No one would have said anything.
Right.
It was, no, this is our territory. We don't, you know, it's like the people who lament the closure of the bookstore in the neighborhood, but never actually went and bought anything there. It's like, oh, Newsweek is ours. Do you read Newsweek? No, I stopped reading that 15 years ago. But right. This idea that this is our territory. No. These are the billionaires, John Oliver says, that are bad and shouldn't be taking over media. These are the people, and it goes on in that episode, she made mistakes in a couple of stories. A couple of stories they put out were wrong. Never happened in the New York Times. Never happened on the John Oliver show. I mean, the idea that you are grasping at these straws, journalists make mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes that are said to be mistakes, in Oliver's case on the show, I don't even think are mistakes, particularly this one, the St. Louis clinic thing. But this kind of idea that this is our territory, you're not allowed in it, and that's what offends us so greatly. What we're saying to people is we cannot have this integrated idea of different political views. We are at war. We're at war with a fascist government, et cetera. You go to your corner, I go to my corner, and never the twain shall meet. I don't think that's a healthy media culture.
No. Yeah, you're with us or against us. I know that Jamie Reed story, and again, that's another example, I think, of someone who is this liberal lesbian who was a whistleblower in what was happening in this gender clinic and exposing it, and it actually made some, a lot of progress culturally, and that was, one of the Free Press's stories, and that's why she's persona non grata. That's why these people who, they hate these types of people, because they're effective. It reminds me a little of the CNN era with Chris Licht. Chris was someone who I consider a friend. Chris actually was the EP of Stephen Colbert's show, and I was the EP at CBS News for a long time. Went over to CNN and tried to just again make it a little bit less crazy. That was basically his mandate. But he faced such an uprising from internal. Some massive losers like Oliver Darcy who have gone on to just become just absolutely terrible media, reporters, critics, whatever you want to call it, because they could not deal with the fact that people would have a Trump town hall and not arrest him on stage. I mean, Caitlin Collins, who did that Trump town hall, was pilloried during one of her first times where she asked Joe Biden some tough questions at the beginning of his administration. Because how dare Caitlin Collins ask any tough questions of someone who's not named Donald Trump? And that is and I have to say, I think social media is, I love social media. I spend way too much time on X. I think this is a lot of the cause of the terrible decline we've seen, because the incentive structure is completely out of whack. You can yell at people and you can praise people, and both those things are terrible now because that feedback loop is right there. And I think that it takes a lot for someone to deal with that and to hold strong and not to just give in.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost two separate types of media these days.
Yeah.
I mean, the media, people lament the fact that we don't have a William F. Buckley and a firing line and a debate that is kind of high level, and somebody who is a gatekeeper like Buckley and kicking out of the movement people or in the John Birch Society and crazy people. That still exists. It's smaller and people pay less attention to it. But the other media is the Piers Morgan kind of media, where you see, I watch the show on YouTube periodically. It keeps serving me. I don't know, how do I get YouTube to stop serving me that? Is there a number I can call and be like, no more Piers Morgan, please? But you see these 90...
It is identified. You want it. That's what it thinks.
It's not. No, I need content for this show. I'm watching it for the wrong... It's like when my daughter logged into Spotify, and then all of a sudden, all my music is shit. And I'm like, that's just the kid. Come on. Is there a button I can push? Look, Piers Morgan is an interesting guy in a lot of ways, but Piers Morgan is also not somebody who cares about the tone and the tenor of the debate. You see 7 anti-Semites and 5 versions of Tommy Robinson. And it's just these people shouldn't be on TV, the loudest, most lunatic people on X, but people love it. Where is CNN going? In the ratings, it's ticking up because of Abby Phillips' show. And it is the closest thing that CNN has to Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, who was introduced to Americans via CNN.
That's right.
And look, I have a lot of respect for the guy. I think he's funny. I think he's smart. I think he's a great, great television host, producer, whatever you want to say, creator. It's not my cup of tea, but like these are different, distinct sets of media now. I mean, you executive produce Megyn Kelly's show, which is somewhere in the middle of that, which gives a lot of attention to what's happening on X and social media, and there's a lot of serious interviews, and it's like a good mix, which is what I like to do too. But it seems to be that there are these two very distinct types of media these days.
There are, yeah, and I think Piers is a great one because what you mentioned, yes, here's your loudest anti-Semites, but they're on with Rabbi Shmuley. Okay, so they've got
who, by the way, I think is a plant of the anti-Semites. By the way, but continue.
Well, but that's what you want. I think that he's as he talks about, he's like a free speech absolutist. He wants he wants people to get out there and spar. And the great thing about Piers also is you can tell when he knows he has something. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna just keep drilling down and drilling down. I mean, he's got this great segment. He does do the long form interviews. He had Don Lemon on, and it was just ridiculous. He called him a dick. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a couple things at play. Obviously, there's the entertainment value of it, but I do think that you can't do the Piers Morgan uncensored show on CNN. And the Abby Phillip is like the watered down. Scott Jennings is sort of and that just kind of feels a little bit forced and a little bit fake. And then as soon as it gets good, it's like Abby's like, all right, let's get out of this.
Go to commercial.
It's like, oh, let him fight. But. So yes, I think that there's something for everyone right now, which is I think the biggest most obvious thing to say. But I also do think that part of this is that we have all. It's not that we're necessarily in our own corners politically, but I do think that our interests we have an algorithm that is tailored to what we're interested in. And there's going to be the ones that really pop up, the ones that resonate with other people. I'm fascinated by shows and people that I probably would never want to encounter in real life and spend some time with. But I think that there's real entertainment value in people who have identified being authentically themselves. And are not reading from the teleprompter.
Steve, what's the guilty pleasure? Tell me what the guilty YouTube pleasure is. That you maybe don't want to spend time with them in real life, but you're happy to do it, in bed as your eyes are getting heavy.
Oh my gosh! Oh, there's a bunch. I mean, I would say anything.
Just don't say Nick Fuentes, and you're fine.
No. Nick Fuentes is a little bit too far out there. But I think you go down the conspiracy rabbit holes. You definitely find some interesting people. I mean, look, I love Piers' show. I don't know if I'd call it a full-on guilty pleasure, but I think that there's something to when you see that viral clip and then kind of digging into it. And I also I love watching how things develop. So a lot of times you'll see the 1 minute clip, but then I like to go back and see how did we get here? How did we get to this point? Why is Dave Smith yelling at this person in this way? Or
but it's funny. The interesting in that one, somebody who doesn't apparently like me. I apparently did a segment saying I sucked, but that's fine by me. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it, by the way, not because I'm above it. It's just because I know that I get obsessed with it and start responding to it, and I'm trying not to do that. But then he on a great utility of free press is he goes on with my friend Coleman Hughes and does a 3.5 hour thing, which you see and you listen to is oh, I understand the genesis of a lot of his ideas and how kind of supple they are as arguments when it's not a little clip on Piers Morgan. And you have you're debating with 10 other people and you have a minute and a half. Look, I stopped doing cable news hits because it was 5 hours out of my day to say 5 sentences ultimately.
Right.
And I just don't find it very, very useful. And I guess viewers don't mostly either until people take the gloves off. But let's remember something. Let's remember back when it was Paul Begala and Tucker Carlson on the old network he used to work for, and Jon Stewart, who confronted them on this mild show when Tucker was not way out there in the stratosphere with Alex Jones as he is now. And they were accused of hurting America.
You're hurting America. Yeah. That was the criticism. The idea of having a normal conversation is hurting America. I know. And actually, Jon Stewart at that time was so powerful that he actually, I believe, changed the trajectory of the network.
Killed the show, right?
Yeah, pretty much was the beginning of the end of Crossfire, unfortunately, and also of that kind of ethos at places like CNN. You still could go to Fox News and watch the lefty and the righty fight it out, but you lost that sort of debate. I mean, it was just pure debate. I got to give you another guilty pleasure. I was thinking about this. I mentioned Don Lemon earlier, and the interesting thing about Don Lemon is he was completely like.
I've never heard this sentence. The interesting thing about Don Lemon is, but continue.
I'll tell you. He had some guardrails at CNN. I'm not talking myself into like Barry at CBS. He occasionally like said the ridiculous thing about Nikki Haley, but he was working within a structure.
Remember the black holes?
Yes, he did the missing plane, but also he did the Nikki Haley's past her prime, like that whole thing. That was like not on the prompter, and so that's what happened. But right now, Don Lemon is going out in the streets of Chicago all weekend, and he's just live streaming himself interviewing people for hours, and I have to tell you, I mean, he's finding these people who are saying completely offensive and ridiculous things. And Don's like, that's not the views of the Don Lemon Nation or whatever he's saying. Yeah. But that is someone who is putting things out there that I'm shocked that he's doing it. This is someone who was at a very high level in more traditional media, and maybe could use some guardrails.
Yeah, look, that's the question and I'm wondering your opinion on this, of the guardrails. I mean, I think that this is the most interesting argument about media and about old people that were in traditional media who are now doing their own thing in the sort of Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson way. Were the guardrails there and helpful, and they were actually much further away from their persona on television? Or are the people now, and you can pick any of these people, I mean, if it's Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson on the right, and these people like Don Lemon on the left, or are they now showing who they truly are? Or are they is it audience capture? So that I think these are two separate things. Like people say I mean, I hear this literally all the time. Anybody who used to be in traditional media and is now doing their own thing, it's like, now it's all audience capture. They're just making a ton of money and they're feeding the conspiracy theories and all this bullshit because the audience wants it. And half the time, it depends on the person. I sit there and say, no, maybe the capture was from the network that was keeping them like, no, you can't do this, because we heard that about Tucker quite a bit at Fox, was that they were saying no to certain things. And ultimately, I think it was that Fox Nation web thing that he did about January 6th that precipitated I don't know. But so honestly, it's different. Again, it's different for every person, but I think there's a one-fits-all thing that people apply and say, now this is all audience capture. But oftentimes I think no, there's a lot of strictures when you're at a network and at a mainstream publication. And now when you're kind of loosened up from them, you can do what you want. That's probably in some ways a more accurate portrayal of who the person is. And one final thing on this, and you won't comment on your boss and our mutual friend Megan. I mean, we just did an episode of The Fifth Column with her.
It was great.
And Megan was really interesting because she's like, I said to her, you used to say, all of us, we're of no party or clique. And now, and she's like, I changed over time, seeing this stuff up close. And that's also a possibility that people don't consider, that people might have legitimately changed their political views and are just showing that on TV.
Yeah. Well, so a few things there. I think, first of all, audience capture is just another way of ratings watching. Listen, when I was at CNN, every day at 4 p.m., we would look at the quarter-hour ratings, and if you really had the right contact, you could look at the minute-by-minute ratings, and you would see, and decisions were made in cable news newsrooms about who to book and what segments to do based on this arbitrary, 50,000 people in the country have a Nielsen box, and so then that extrapolates out. It's these decisions should never have been made at that level, but that is the kind of thing that was happening, and that's a version of audience capture also. You now get on Substack, you are literally seeing, okay, I just hit publish here, and now I lost this many subscribers. Okay, well, that is, that's bad for my bottom line. I mean, that is a very
Yeah.
real situation here. So I think that that's real, and it takes a lot. It takes some financial freedom, and it takes some, I would say, intellectual freedom to stand strong and to stick to your principles and to do it. Whether it's you guys with the Fifth Column or what we do with Megyn Kelly's show, we get lots of feedback all the time, and it's incumbent on you, if you want to be authentic, and who the majority of your audience, the people that don't send their worst and their best comments over to you, but the majority that don't say anything and just consume you, to just continue to be yourself. So
you got to remember those people, and as a producer, I'm sure you do, but it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah,
because it's like you look at the reviews on Yelp, and it's like nobody had like a pretty good meal. I'm like, that was a pretty good meal.
Right.
You write the review, and it's like, what a horrible meal that was, and the waiter was an asshole, and all this stuff. So that's the stuff that you get in, and you really have to make sure. And now our producer filters some of that out, but I get them. And I mistakenly click on them, and it's been hard. It's it's like the Fifth Column, the other show that I do. It's not as good, but it's fine. You should watch it. That we had a fall off at the beginning of the second Trump administration because we just like pissing on people in power when they're doing things that we don't think are great. And we had a lot of people, because we were pissing on Biden for 4 years, are like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for. And it's like, it kind of was. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah. Honestly, there's some free press corollaries there as well. I think that there was absolutely some of that fall off with what the free press was doing. It was like the anti-woke side, and then all of a sudden Trump's in power, and they're not Trump fans, and all of a sudden he's in power, and you're pushing up against that, and maybe some of the overreaches on press freedom and some of the other things like you were talking about at the top of the show. No, it is a very real thing to kind of stay up against that. I will just say one thing on Megyn's side, and I know she kind of got into this a little bit. I think that lawfare, particularly for her as a lawyer, was like this before and after moment. I have to say, I don't know what will happen in the landscape. I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen next week? But I don't think it's a red blue situation there. I think that there was something like visceral about the absolute outrage she felt in 2023, leading into 2024, over what happened with lawfare, and it was like this moment that was, it changed kind of how she saw the culture and the world.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very natural, like, in some ways people say, oh, is it for, like, you could see that evolution. It was all out in public. I mean, the great thing about Megyn is she is herself. Yes. And she's exactly the same behind the scenes as she is on air. And I think that it was clear for all to see kind of how it got to that, how she got to where she is.
A friend of the show took a screenshot of when we were on the show. Well, not the last time, the time before that, when she was like, one of us had a mild kind of like, yeah, but this keeps going. And then they attack, and she's like, I don't fucking care. And we were all like, oh, okay. And it's like, but I don't think this is telling tales out of school. I think she said it on the show, but I just did a episode of the Fifth Column coming up, I think tomorrow, with my dear friend, Mary Catherine Ham. And Mary Catherine is a great, sort of calls balls and strikes. She gives Trump credit. She gets angry at Trump.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and she was like, yeah, the Tish James thing, I just don't care. It's like, I don't care. Like, she's out there at rallies with her hands up, clenching the fist. It's like, is it reverse lawfare? Sorry. Listen, and I get that instinct. I really do.
It's all, it's all theater. I think Tish James, it could not be happier that this happened to her. I truly believe that this is, she's got her, talk about audience capture. I mean, she was at that Zoran Mamdani rally with her fist up. She's like, this is great. All of a sudden I got the juice again in the culture.
No, I mean, that's the thing, is that you've been in media long enough that you've heard the across a table at an editorial meeting, or in between commercial breaks, that don't say that someone says is going to sue us, and it's like, oh, awesome. Please let them sue us. Right. There's that element of it. I'm sure she's kind of feeling that at the moment. Let me ask you a question about the kind of state of media. You wrote your book, it was a year and a half ago. When did that come out? Yeah,
it came out February 2023. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so about a year and a half ago. That book was by the way, you should go buy the book. It's fantastic. It is a phenomenal. I got it on galleys. I loved it. It's a great indictment of the media, particularly in that time, 2023, when that book comes out. You're obviously writing it probably 2020, 21, 22. I mean, it's a real crazy
21,
time.
22, yeah.
What is it? If you look back now, we've gone from some of the wildest excesses, both in the culture and in the media, to a kind of softer place, I would say, but not entirely. There's a lot of crazy stuff, but it seems less like the mania and the madness of 2020. How do you kind of assess it now from 3-4 years hence?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing I would say, and this kind of is a thread that passed through a lot of them, is you get people like John Oliver, Jimmy Kimmel, and Stephen Colbert. I mean, obviously Colbert is not just, ending his show and being, kicked off of CBS. They're shutting down the entire franchise entirely. Jimmy Kimmel, he got his little punishment and he's back on. These people are no longer powerful. And what's interesting is, unlike when I wrote the book, there was the power structures, the corporate gatekeepers were very powerful. This was the COVID era, which was massively censorious, the Hunter Biden laptop. Those things, those instincts are still there, I think, with the enemies of freedom, I would say, and this is not a left-right thing. I think that there's a lot of galvanized, thought about this on the left and the right when you look at New York and DC power. Obviously a very different kind of right in that situation. But those people have been exposed in a very real way. I think 2024 was a real eye opener for a lot of people, for corporations. That is, encouraging in a lot of ways for me. I mean, I think there's this sense now that there has actually been some movement, some wins in that area. And people are like having fun. I mean, JD Vance is just writing ridiculous, ex post quote tweets of Elizabeth Warren saying, you're the reason that we did it on this day for Indigenous Peoples Day. I mean, there's something fun that's happening, and I do think that it came from these gatekeepers being exposed, and more people, the average person, the person who does not watch cable news, does not watch the Megyn Kelly show, my friends here in Texas who are not in media and are not interested in the media and have no interest in reading my book, those people know that these people in power are kind of full of shit. And that's different than a few years ago. I think that there's been a real movement in the right direction.
Yeah, I think one of the things that not to talk endlessly about these shows on ABC, CBS, et cetera, the Jimmy Kimmel show, Colbert, et cetera. The one thing that's always surprised me is that we haven't, this is why somebody like Barry or anyone, it doesn't have to be Barry, some young person who comes and builds a media brand that is a digital media brand that is successful, that people want to read, they have to go into places like this and break things. And I say that because I look at the ratings of Kimmel and Colbert, et cetera, and then I look at the budgets and the staff, and it's like, how has this not caught up? In the sense that you can do, on the left, you can do Hassan Piker, who is, slobbering at a microphone on Twitch, or you can do
zapping his dog.
Yeah, zapping his dog, which apparently is entertainment these days. But you can do that and get 3 million people per stream. And then on the other hand, is people that, whether it's a comic like Rogan or Andrew Schultz or people like this, can do insane numbers. Andrew Schultz does not fill up stadiums because he went up the hierarchy of comedy in the way that people are talking about Barry should have gone up the hierarchy of media if she wants to control this. It's amazing to me that these shows still exist and that they exist with these exorbitant budgets that employ so many people. I'm glad they all have jobs, but I think that they're way, way behind what is happening in media at the moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was, I hate to trace everything back to COVID, but there was an element of that for sure, which was like, as soon as we could see that Anderson Cooper can do his show from his basement, like all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a second, why are we doing it this way? And they get the same ratings, so nothing changes there. And then all of a sudden, that's why you see a lot of people now sitting at home on their laptops and not going to some expensive flash studio where they take a black car over to some random office building to go do that. It's just that's completely changed. And so yeah, I do think Andrew Schultz is a great example. Andrew Schultz came to power because he put out Instagram videos and YouTube videos during the pandemic and became a massive star. That is the new model, and yeah, I think that a lot of eyes have been opened about that, and that's the other thing I would say. it's like everything is like COVID or Trump, and this one is a little bit of both, because I also think in any normal cultural society, what happened to Trump, getting deplatformed from all social media platforms, getting, really was like, persona non grata, even on the right during 2021, 2022, after January 6th, he should not have been able to make a comeback. Like it just didn't make any logical sense. But
do you think that had to do with it? Like the comeback was kind of facilitated and the wheels were greased because of the deplatforming on, Twitter and all these things? Like we can just put him in jail or get rid of him, and that will be the end of it?
The mugshot, like you could probably say the mugshot had a very real effect on certainly him winning the primary. There was back when that happened, people were talking about Ron DeSantis like he had a real shot. I mean, the mugshot sealed it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. It was like as soon as that happened, it was this guy is not going to lose his primary. You cannot let this guy lose the primary. And it was the attacks on him and it was the exposing that those didn't work. In fact, they had the opposite effect. The lawfare had, getting those 50, felony convictions had the opposite effect. And so as soon as people saw that, what else isn't real? What other things are smoke and mirrors? And it's this entire media ecosystem is like that. And so, look, I mean, Barry Weiss is going to be successful at CBS News, not because she moves the ratings 10%, better. Like that's just not how it's going to work. She's going to be successful if CBS has some level of juice that they never had before. And they really were doomed to fail before. Like there was never any way back. There's maybe a foot in the right direction now because maybe they do something interesting. Maybe something happens there that people talk about, because that was not happening before.
Yeah, I mean, the political culture, everything's been burned to the ground, and we've done it in a totally different way. I mean, if you had told me 15 years ago there's a mugshot of the president and that means he's going to win the primary, I'd be like, you are out of your mind. So, I mean, I think there's got to be some kind of reflective thing in media too. But I mean, I think about how we consume things. Andrew Schultz, we mentioned him, and he's a friend, and I really love him, and I think he's a brilliant guy. He's really, really, really bright guy, just beyond the fact that he's a good comic. It's like him interviewing Trump and people going, well, why didn't you push back hard enough on this and on that? And then he has Sanders on. Nobody, by the way, said that, because Andrew was also slobbering. I mean, I think more so with Bernie. And I would say that to him. I mean, same thing with Rogan. But there is something to the kind of interview style that is just the kind of, we always talked in politics. Do you remember the thing with Skip Gates, the arrest of Henry Louis Gates in this racial incident in Cambridge, Massachusetts? And, there was the beer summit and this idea of the guy you want to have a beer with, the beer. But it was never put into practice in the way that, like, Theo Von talking to Donald Trump, I thought was the most revealing interview of Donald Trump I've ever seen, particularly because Donald Trump started interviewing Theo Von. And that was like, oh my God, I see this man.
Tell me about cocaine.
Yeah, he's like, what's that like? It's pretty wild stuff. It's wild. And it's like, this is amazing. And there's a lot to be said for that, because we didn't understand, I didn't certainly, in 2015, I remember being at Vice and saying on camera, like, the guy who's talking about the working class is a billionaire. He's certainly a billionaire now. I don't know if he was then, but he's certainly a billionaire now. But like, that was hilarious. And everyone was like, patting me on the back. Of course, this guy pretending to be a tribune of the working class. The point we realized about Trump is a very simple thing, is that he talks about how rich he is and says, like, how did you get away with this stuff and not paying taxes? Because I'm smart, because I know how, like that kind of stuff. Unlike these idiots who are, making millions and millions on the stock market and in Congress pretending that they're working class. The guy who is honest about being rich was much more resonant with voters than people pretending that they were poor. And that, I thought, was a great kind of thing about opened my eyes in the Trump early Trump.
Oh my God. The 2016 moment that stood out to me the most was when he and Hillary Clinton were standing on that stage. And the idea that she came to his wedding, to Melania, had come up. And she's like, we just happened to kind of be in Florida at the time. And he's like, no, I paid her. I paid her lots of money and she came to my wedding. That's
Clinton
what happened.
Foundation. It was like a Clinton Foundation thing, right?
Right.
A donation.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I like if she had to come, I paid her.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like that sort of honesty is like, that you're just dealing with people on different levels there. And yeah, I think the people call it the podcast election in 2024, but it got to show that Donald Trump cares about people. He's interested in things. Obviously, he's an interesting person, but he also is curious. He's interesting, to talk to. And Andrew Schultz brought that out. Theo Vaughn, Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, it was he did the whole run, and it showed a different side that you never would have seen if podcasts didn't have some sort of resonance and cultural cachet that they had gotten to at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you can hate his politics, love his politics, but the thing that should be understood about him is that you put him in front of the media and he'll only stop talking when the cameras run out of batteries and people say it's time to go home, and it's like he doesn't sleep. And then you were trying to get Kamala Harris to do Joe Rogan, and it was like, no, I can't be trusted to deliver a message for the Democratic Party and to the Democratic voters of somebody who might
she can't
mildly
do The View.
push down. She could not do The View. I mean, look, I think this has been like the most revolutionary time in media. Let me ask you one more question. I've kept you for a bit, Steve. We appreciate it. But this kind of atomization, is it sustainable when everybody has a Substack and everybody has a podcast? And, the crumbling of the networks is their own fault. And the cable news network is their own fault. But is there going to be a point where it snaps back, as somebody who is a kind of eagle-eyed, jeweler's eye critic of the media, is it going to kind of come back to the way it used to be, but in a more kind of intellectually diverse way, because people got away with it being not so intellectually diverse for a long time?
Yeah, I think yes and no. The truth is that the amount of people that go and sit down like I do and turn on my television and it's just like there's a guide and you start clicking around like that, those people are fewer and far between. I'm being phased out. That is just not going to exist. But I do think, like, here's my own horn here. We started MK Media with Megan to bring on other people and to have, to begin to kind of make a network. Two-way is putting together a network. It's similar in the sense of you're grouping together things. And I do think there's going to be a lot more of this. You take Jim Acosta and Don Lemon and a bunch of these, like former CNN, MSNBC people that have gone to Substack. Eventually, you're going to bundle them together and they're going to be called something. And that's going to be the new thing that's kind of newspaper-ish or digital, website-ish.
The Dispatch, the Bulwark,
yes.
These things. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that will happen. But I still think at the end of the day, you're grouping together individuals. You're grouping together. The closest association people will have is that direct connection because you follow these people on Instagram. You see them with their families. Though that is not. I don't think we're ever going away from that. We're going to have our deepest connections with individual people that we feel a very strong connection with. Now, those people might be grouped with other people that are kind of the same, or maybe they're vastly different, but they connect because they're vastly different. Whatever happens, and you're going to find your audience that way. But we're not going back to the old days of ABC News and CBS News. It's just the old way is done. But it's exciting.
But you've been the man behind the curtain at MK Media, which is such a crazy success that I'm kind of mad at you for having that success. I'm a jealous journalist. We talked about this at the top of the show. Everywhere I go, the second I leave, everybody makes a lot of money. This happened at Free Press. But just for people who are asking, that's how much money I made on that deal. Zero. I got nothing. It was very Trump of me. I got nothing. Vice, we all had shares. The poor people at Refinery 29 and myself, nothing. I just, if you guys.
Not from Vice?
No, I didn't get anything.
No.
Nothing. Well, it was worth $180 billion or whatever it was. And then he said, we'll hold out for more. We'll keep going. And that didn't work out very well for me or for anyone else that worked at Vice. But it's a long way, Steve, of thanking you and asking you for money. If I see you maybe in Anaheim, because you're doing stadium shows. You're like fucking Fish or something. And I can't believe what is this going to be like? I'm doing this show for people who don't know. I'm doing this. The Fifth Column is doing a show. With MeganKelly.com. With Megan at a place where there's also hockey games, professional hockey games. right? I don't know what is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go early because the Bruins are playing the Ducks on Wednesday at the same arena.
Nice.
So
And then just stay for your stage show. No, it should be fun.
I'm not leaving.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know? You've never done this before?
I've never done a studio or like a live tour like this. So no, we're excited. It starts next week. MeganKelly.com.
Oh, wait, Mark Halperin of 2A.
He'll be there.
Is going to be in, I think, Fort Worth.
He's coming to Fort Worth. My hometown next door.
All right.
So yeah, no, we're having a whole group. All of our Megan friends are going to be coming out.
That's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to being lustily booed when I walk out for not being nice to Donald Trump or something. Steve Krakauer, buy the book. It's a couple years old. It's still in print. You can go on Amazon and Steve Krakauer. You can find it immediately. MK, are you still doing the Hill column? I just want to plug that, or not?
News Nation. I do
News Nation. Oh, yeah, News Nation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can see his stuff at News Nation, and you can always see him here on the Moynihan Report because we liked having him. We're going to have him back. So thank you, Steve, and we'll see you next month in California. And the rest of you don't have to wait that long. You can see you on Thursday on this very same 2A network. I got to keep mentioning 2A. They get mad at me. Did you hear that? I got mad. They yelled at me. Said, no, you got to talk about 2A. But go subscribe at Moynihan Report on YouTube, and you get all the shows, all the clips, all that stuff. Trade them with your friends and tell people about the show and subscribe. And we will see you again on Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye.